all, welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. For today's discussion, we've picked up a number of articles from The Hindu and the Indian Express which are both important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. Now, let us have a look at the topics one by one. The first article for the day has been picked up from page number 8 of The Hindu, Recognize this leave as a woman's right. So this particular article discusses about a political party in the state of Tamil Nadu having promised in one of its election manifesto for the general elections 2024 that it will be pushing the central government in order to enact a law that provides menstrual leave for women, which is a step towards gender equality. So here we'll be discussing about this particular concept of menstrual leave, its need, the arguments against it, and what are the various initiatives and the steps that have been taken by the governments in India and across the world regarding the same. The second article for the day has been picked up from page number 9 of The Hindu. Does Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana need a design change? So this particular article discusses about the Ayushman Bharat program of the Indian government and also discusses about what are all the various challenges that the PMJAY scheme actually faces with respect to that of its implementation, and also what are the potential solutions for the improvement of the same. The third article for the day has been picked up from page number 10 of the Indian Express, The Last Mile Hitch. So this particular article discusses about the recent decisions on the interest rates that have been taken by the US Federal Reserve, and it also talks about the concept of what is the US Federal Reserve interest rate and what impact does the interest rate decisions actually have on that of India. The fourth article for the day has been picked up from page number 11 of the Indian Express, A System That Heals. So this particular article discusses about the increasing expenditure of the government towards the domain of health and how significantly or consistently the out-of-pocket expenditure of the individuals towards the health has actually decreased, and this actually shows, or it is seen as, a progress towards universal access to affordable health care as envisioned in the National Health Policy of 2017. The last article for the day has been picked up from page number 13 of the Indian Express, MPOX. So this particular article discusses about the biggest ever outbreak of the monkeypox in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and here, with respect to that of the UPSC relevance, we'll be discussing about the disease of MPOX, its causes, transmission, as well as the treatment options. And we will be concluding the session by discussing few prelims as well as mains practice questions. The first article for the day is Recognize this leave as a woman's right. So this particular article discusses about one of the political parties in the state of Tamil Nadu which has actually promised as a part of its election manifesto for the 2024 general elections that it will persuade or it will push the central government in order to implement a law that will actually provide menstrual leave for women that is actually seen as a step towards gender equality. So, however, this is actually a political news in nature, but our basic takeaway from this article is, let us actually discuss about what is menstrual leave, what is the need for menstrual leave, what are the arguments in favor and against of that of menstrual leaves, and what are the various initiatives taken by different state as well as the central government in India as well as globally for the same. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the concept of menstrual leave, its need, etc. And this is actually an integral part of women empowerment. And we can actually map this particular topic under mains, that is GS paper 1, social empowerment, and also GS paper 2. Very sadly, that women are placed under vulnerable sections of the population. If we actually look at the previous year questions, it is very important to note that all the vulnerable sections of the population like women, children, the elderly, etc. are very, very important for your examination, particularly for the mains examination. And the schemes related to them are actually important for your prelims examination. So if you see in the year 2019, there has been a question on the continued challenges that women in India face. And in 2018, there was a question on women's movement in India has not addressed the issues of women of the lower social strata. So here you can actually understand that women and the social, strata or the status is very, very important for your exam. Now let us understand what this particular article is talking about, and let's get into the discussion of why is there a need for menstrual leave. So a political party, as I told you, from Tamil Nadu has promised in its election manifesto for the 2024 general elections that it will push the central government in order to enact a law that will be providing menstrual leave for women as a step towards gender equality. So moving forward, let us directly hit the topic, that is, what is menstrual leave? Menstrual leave, also known as a period leave, is a policy that allows employees or the students to take time off from work or the school when they are experiencing menstrual pain or the discomfort associated with it. And it can be either paid or it can be unpaid leave, or it is actually the time given for you to actually take the rest. And in India, there is no such legislative provision for menstrual leave, and this is actually a grave concern. So now let us actually look at the need for the menstrual leave policy in India. So first one is the health impact. It has been observed that approximately 20% of the Indian women actually suffer from PCOS, which is nothing but polycystic ovarian syndrome, and around 25 million women actually suffer from endometriosis, that is nothing but the thickening of the uterus or the uterine wall. All these can actually cause severe menstrual pain, and a menstrual leave policy in this case would actually address these issues by allowing women time off the work in order to manage these symptoms effectively. The second one is, during these days, it is actually believed, or it is true, that women actually lose the productivity. Okay, so there is productivity loss. Research indicate that menstrual related discomfort actually leads to approximately 8.9 days of lost productivity per employee per year, which is a huge number, almost 10 days, right? The next one is educational continuity. So according to the recent studies, we can find that 23 million girls actually drop out of school every year in India due to lack of menstrual hygiene management services in schools. And in this case, if menstrual leave is actually provided for the school children, this could actually help in order to reduce the dropout rates, thereby eventually leading to increase in the literacy rate of the country, okay? And also will lead to better educational outcomes. The students can actually fare as well as perform better. Next one is promotion of gender equality. So giving menstrual leave, actually instituting the menstrual leave helps the level playing field by acknowledging the fact that biological differences and specific health needs of women, thereby promoting the gender equality in both the educational as well as the professional settings. The next one is the cultural shift, okay? With menstruation often viewed as a stereotype or a stereotypical topic or a taboo subject in India, a formal menstrual leave, that too when it is actually given by the government, this can actually help normalize the menstruation as nothing very abnormal or paranormal, but it is actually a natural biological process, challenge that existing the stigmas, and also foster open discussion about menstrual health. So moving forward, what are the arguments that are actually taking place against this menstrual leave policy is that the first one is that it actually can cause a potential discrimination, as in could actually reinforce the gender stereotypes as well as lead to workplace discrimination. The second one is workplace disruption, that is, it could potentially disrupt the workflow and pose the scheduling challenges. The next one, difficulty in implementation. Okay, there are associated challenges in determining the leave days as well as monitoring if they are effectively and they are honestly utilized by women. The next one, there can be a potential abuse. There are concerns that is actually raised about exploitation or abuse of women by their top, managers or the bosses, affecting productivity as well as cost. The next one is unfair treatment. This is actually seen as an unfair treatment against that of men, because they are actually, seen as a discriminatory practice against women in favor of women and without severe symptoms. Now moving into the next part, let us understand what were the initiatives which have been taken in this regard with respect to that of providing menstrual leave for women across various states in the country. The first one, let's look at the legislative efforts. That is, there have been, instances where there were private member bills that were passed for the same. That is, in 2017, to be very specific, the Menstruation Benefit Bill by Neong Ering had actually been proposed for, providing 2 days of menstrual leave for women employees in every sector, be it public or the private sector. Moving on, the Jyoti Mani's Right to Menstrual Hygiene and Paid Leave Bill of 2019, this actually aimed to integrate the menstrual leave into the rights framework, suggesting the penalties for non-compliance under the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act of 2018. And moving forward, the next one is the Women's Sexual, Reproductive and Menstrual Rights Bill of 2018 by Shashi Tharoor, and similar bills by other members of the parliaments have also sought to establish legal rights in surrounding, menstrual health. Moving forward, let us actually see various initiatives that have been taken by various states. The first one is state initiatives of Kerala and Bihar. It is a very good initiative by the state of Kerala, who was actually the pioneer in recognizing the menstrual challenges, allowing the period leave for the students as early as 1912. And Bihar followed in 1992 with a 2-day menstrual leave policy for the government employees. And also the recent developments, if you see, in 2023, Kerala introduced comprehensive menstrual and maternity leave for the students above the age of 18, showing progressive policy adoption at the state level. And also, if we see private initiatives by the institutions of Zomato, Swiggy and Byju's have also, taken up this very seriously by providing 10 days a year for its women. That is, Zomato provides these many days, and Swiggy and Byju's have also introduced similar policies. Now looking at the way forward, the first is we need to have sufficient legislative support. Here, enact clear and enforceable legislation that actually mandates menstrual leave across various sectors, ensuring uniformity and legal backing for the policy. The next one, there has to be remote work options, like, depending on the discomfort that a woman actually suffers, work from home options actually have to be provided. Next one, there has to be cultural sensitization, that is removing any kind of stigma or the taboo that is actually surrounding this particular, menstruation, that actually have to be there, so that, there is understanding across genders and community about this particular natural process. Next one, there has to be corporate accountability. Encourage the corporate responsibility by requiring companies to adopt this menstrual leave policies with provisions for non-discriminatory practices and privacy protections. The next article that we'll be discussing about is, does PMJAY need a design change? So this particular article talks about the central government's Ayushman Bharat scheme, which actually aims to provide universal health coverage, and also we'll be discussing about its subcomponents, that is the healthcare centers as well as the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. So with respect to this particular article, we'll be discussing about the implementation challenges that this particular scheme of PMJAY actually faces, and also what are the suggested solutions in order to improve the same is what we'll be discussing here. So in this particular article, we'll be talking about the Ayushman Bharat program, and we'll be discussing about the universal health coverage as well as Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, and we can actually map it to the syllabus of mains examination GS paper 2, particularly issues relating to development and management of social sector services relating to health. So moving forward, we actually have previous year questions that have been asked in the mains examination, because health is a very, very important topic, as well as, it also is important with respect to the vulnerable sections of the population. So here, in 2015, we actually have a question on public health system, and also in 2016, we actually have a question on local community level healthcare intervention. Okay. So moving forward, let us actually look at what this particular article actually has to talk about. So this article discusses the Ayushman Bharat program, which is a major initiative by the Indian government that primarily aims at achieving universal health coverage. The article also dwells into the challenges that India's Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, that is the PMJAY, is actually facing under this particular Ayushman Bharat initiative, and what are the potential measures that actually have to be taken for improving the same. So moving forward, for the prelims as well as the mains examination, it is very, very important to understand what are all the schemes, what are the beneficiaries covered under the scheme, that is, who are the beneficiaries and what are the objectives, when was it actually launched, which is the nodal agency, etc. is very, very important. So now we'll be discussing about what is this particular Ayushman Bharat program. Okay. So here, Ayushman Bharat scheme is an umbrella health scheme of the central government, which was launched in the year 2018. And the major aim or the prerogative of this particular program is to achieve universal health coverage, leaving no one behind. And if you see, what are all the areas that this particular scheme addresses is that it addresses the healthcare needs at all the three levels, that is the primary, the secondary as well as the tertiary healthcare, and also covers the prevention of diseases, promotion and ambulatory care at all the levels. And it basically comprises of two major components. So one is the health and wellness centers, that is the HWCs. The next one is Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. So here, since we are dealing with this particular article which has been taken from the Hindu, we'll be discussing primarily about what are the challenges that this Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana is actually facing. So with respect to that, let's actually look into what is this PMJAY. So PMJAY is globally the largest government-funded health insurance program, and this was initiated in the year 2018. The moment the Ayushman Bharat program actually came into existence, and it provides a health insurance coverage of rupees 5 lakh per family annually, covering secondary as well as tertiary medical treatment. So here the primary is actually not there. So this is a very, very important fact for your prelims examination. And this, so far as it is provided to over 12 crore families, constituting the bottom 40% of the population based on the socio-economic status. And if you look at the coverage, the insurance actually covers various services or the dimensions like the medical expenses that include surgery, routine medical treatments, your daycare procedures, medication costs, as well as the diagnostic tests. So moving forward, let us understand what is the eligibility criteria to be, enrolled as a beneficiary under this particular scheme. Is that PMJAY is an entitlement-based scheme that actually determines the eligibility based on the latest socio-economic caste census, that is the SECC. And states and union territories have the option to identify the additional eligible families apart from those beneficiaries who are identified based on the criteria of the SECC. The state and the union territories also have the power to identify additional eligible families using alternative databases that reflect similar socio-economic characteristics to supplement this particular data that has been derived from SECC. Moving forward, looking at the nature of funding that is actually shared between the center and states for this particular scheme is that the funding is a 60:40 split between the central government and the states and the UTs which actually have the legislatures. And if you see for the northeastern states, you have the ratio of 90:10, that is 90% is actually funded by the central government and 10% by the northeastern states, Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh as well as Uttarakhand. And finally, it is entirely funded by the central government for the union territories which do not have the legislatures. So these parameters are very, very important, okay? Now moving forward, let us actually see which is the nodal agency and how this entire scheme is actually managed, okay? So the National Health Authority, which is established under the Society Registration Act of 1860, actually oversees the scheme nationally, while you have the state health agencies which actually manages and oversees this implementation at the state level. And if you look at the performance so far of this particular scheme, as of now, PMJAY has issued approximately of over 34.27 crore cards. That is, so now if you look at the performance of this particular scheme, as of now, PMJAY has actually issued over approximately 35 crore health cards, okay? And around 6.5 crore beneficiaries have received the treatment under this particular scheme, and more than 30,000 hospitals are actually empaneled under this scheme in order to provide the services. So moving forward, as per the article, what are all the challenges that this particular scheme actually faces, post which we will actually look at the suggestions for the improvement that have been suggested by the authors. The first one is financial delays as well as operational issues. So under this, some state hospitals have reported unpaid dues. The dues have not been duly paid to the state hospitals, amounting to hundreds of crores, and this has actually caused a financial strain to the healthcare providers. And also, these financial delays have actually led to some hospitals either refusing or also limiting the intake of the patients who are actually enrolled under PMJAY, and this has actually overall impacted the accessibility to the healthcare system for many people. The next one, there are a lot of systemic inefficiencies that are actually detected or observed. So there are systemic inefficiencies within the public sector itself, and which is well funded, yet it actually fails to deliver the universal healthcare effectively, and this inefficiency extends to the primary level healthcare, and here which is underutilized. And moving forward, the next one is hospital-centric focus. That is, this particular scheme has actually focused entirely on the hospitals, apart from other healthcare centers. So this might be causing a misallocation of the resources and will add unnecessary layers of complexity that do not aid in effective healthcare delivery. So moving forward, the other challenge is the barrier creation. Okay. So an unintended consequence which is mentioned in this particular article is nothing but the creation of barriers where the government hospitals actually starts verifying the PMJAY authorizations, which should ideally not be done in case of a scheme that is actually aiming towards universal healthcare. Okay. So this is the thing. Next one is there is also a common, disparity that has been observed in the performance of the hospitals, and this has actually been varying geographically also. So there have been significant disparities in the performance as well as the activation of the empaneled hospitals under the scheme across different states, with some hospitals which are actually remaining very, very inactive or dormant or barely functional, affecting the uniformity and the reliability of the healthcare services across the country, which are actually under this particular scheme. Now moving forward, let us look at few of the measures that have been suggested by the authors in order to improve this particular, scheme as well as its implementation. The first one, the authors have suggested that there has to be improved public sector efficiency. This is in terms of strengthening the public healthcare system and for enhancing the government spending on healthcare. It's a good thing that of late we can see that the government expenditure towards health has actually increased. That has actually resulted in a consistent or a significant decline in the out-of-pocket expenditure of the individuals. Okay, so here improving the public sector or the public health efficiency is just taking into consideration enhancing the government spending on healthcare. That includes drugs as well as diagnostics as well as aim for comprehensive coverage. Also, we need to review the insurance model by revising the current insurance model, and also that is extending the cap or the age limit or the beneficiaries who are identified under the SECC, and pay providers based on the performance. Target the improvements in the poorer states, because we saw that there has been a geographical disparity across the country. Next one is integrating the healthcare services. We need to integrate the outpatient care diagnostics as well as the drug coverage, then reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure as we already saw, and address comprehensive healthcare needs. Moving forward, the next one is focusing on public trust as well as the hospital capacity. This is nothing but we need to build the trust in the public health system, increasing the hospital capacity, manage the high demand from beneficiaries, and also policy adjustments and financial management has to be done. And here, address the delayed payments and financial mismanagement, as we see that many of the state hospitals do not get over crores of funds, right? Next one is implement stricter guidelines and ensure timely payments to the healthcare providers. And finally, geographical as well as strategic expansion actually has to be done. Here, we need to address the geographical disparities that actually exist in the healthcare system. Next one, increase the hospital capacity in the underserved areas. And next one is ensure insurance coverage, and this will actually translate into the actual healthcare delivery. The next article that we'll be discussing about is last mile HITCH. So this particular article talks about the recent decision that has been taken by the US Federal Reserve on the interest rates. So in this particular article, it is essential to understand what is the US Federal Reserve and how its decision on interest rates will actually impact that of India, because we already have a PYQ in such a fashion. Okay, so in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the US Federal Reserve as well as it is an important part of the monetary policy. And also this particular topic can be mapped to your prelims examination, specifically under economy, current events of national and international importance. As I told you, there has been a PYQ that had been asked in 2021 regarding Indian government bond yields are influenced by which of the following. So any of these kind of monetary policies or the terms and the impacts it actually has on the economy is very, very important, specifically for your prelims examination. So moving forward, let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So the US Federal Reserve has announced that it is going to keep the federal funds rate in a range of around 5.25 to 5.5%. That is the same level it has held since the central bank's last meeting due to an uptick in the inflation. So now let us actually understand what is this particular organization or the body of US Federal Reserve. Okay, so the US Federal Reserve also known as the Federal Reserve System, is nothing but the central bank and the monetary authority of the United States. It is just similar to that of the Reserve Bank of India, which is a central monetary bank for India. Okay, so often called as the Fed, it is arguably the most influential financial institutions in the world, and the Fed's main objectives and duties or responsibilities is to conduct national monetary policy, to supervise and regulate the banks, and maintain a financial stability in the country. Moving forward, let us actually understand about the federal funds rate. Okay, so the federal funds rate is the target interest rate that is actually set by the federal bank, at which the commercial banks actually borrow and lend their extra reserves to one another overnight. This is actually similar to that of the repo rate. Repo rate is what? It is an interest rate at which the banks actually borrow from that of the RBI. Okay, so this is what it is. It's similar to that of the repo rate in India, and it's a key tool which is actually used in the US monetary policy in order to control the inflation in the economy, and this is actually how it typically functions. There's something called as lowering the rates, and it is called as the rate cut, and this is what is actually mentioned in the newspaper often, right? It is the rate cut or the rate hike, and this is what it means. The rate cut is nothing but it is lowering the interest rate. So lowering the federal funds rate actually makes the borrowing cheaper. That is, it actually gives you cheaper loans, okay? Which means that this encourages the spending as well as the investment, but may also lead to a higher inflation. And also higher rates actually means the rate hike. So this actually means raising the federal funds rate actually increases the borrowing cost. That is, the loans actually become very expensive, which can slow down the spending and investment to curb inflation. And moving forward, let us actually see the implication of these US Fed rate cut or the hike on the Indian economy. First, let's actually look about this rate cut, okay, or the lowering of the funds. First one, it will actually enhance the capital flows. That is, let's see, a rate cut by the Fed typically lowers the yields on the assets of the United States, making investment in the emerging markets like India more attractive due to higher returns. And this can actually lead to an increased foreign investment in developing countries or economies like that of Indian stocks as well as the bonds. The next one, there is a possibility of currency appreciation. What does this mean? Increased inflows of foreign capital into India or into the Indian economy can strengthen the Indian rupee against that of a dollar, and this stronger rupee can actually make imports cheaper but may adversely affect the exporters who find it more challenging to compete globally. The next one is decrease in the government bond yields. When the Fed actually cuts the interest rates, that is, when there is a lowering of the interest rates, it actually usually results in lower yields on the US government bonds, and this can actually make the Indian government bonds more attractive due to the relatively higher yields, leading to an increased demand for these particular bonds. Moving forward, let us actually understand the implication of the US rate hike on the Indian economy, okay? So, one is the capital outflow. An increase in the Fed rates actually makes the US assets yield more, attractive returns. So, here there is not much attraction towards developing economies like India. So, potentially this draws investment away from emerging economies like India, and this can actually lead to capital outflows, decreasing the amount of foreign capital available for investments in India. The next one is currency depreciation. When the capital ultimately outflows, this can actually weaken the Indian rupee, thereby making import more expensive and leading to inflationary pressures. However, weaker rupee can actually benefit the exporters by making their goods competitively priced in the global market. And the last one is increase in the government bond yields. A rate hike, as I told you, in the US can actually lead to higher yields on the US government bonds, and this might actually reduce the attractiveness of the Indian bonds when compared to that of the US bonds unless their yields increase correspondingly. Therefore, Indian government bond yields may actually rise as a result in order to maintain the interest of the investor. The next article that we'll be discussing about is a system that actually heals. So this is a very, very positive article as it actually observes an increase in the government expenditure towards health of its citizens. And also, this has eventually led to a significant decline in the out-of-pocket expenditure of the individuals that they actually incur on this particular health. And this is actually a very good or a slow progress towards the universal access of affordable health. And in this particular article, we will be discussing about this concept of government health expenditure as well as this concept of out-of-pocket expenditure. And this is actually very significant and important for GS Paper 2 mains examination, particularly issues relating to health, education and human resources. So moving forward, health, as I told you, is a very important topic, and there has been mains questions in the previous year, specifically in 2015 and 18 regarding public health as well as primary healthcare system, and also healthcare for women, healthcare for children as well as geriatric as well as pediatric healthcare are very important specifically for the mains examination. Moving forward, now let us actually understand what this particular article is discussing about. So, the article discusses how the government health expenditure in India is increasing, while on the other hand, the out-of-pocket spending by the individual is significantly declining consistently, indicating progress towards universal access to affordable health care as envisioned in the National Health Policy of 2017. Now let us quickly brush through what is this concept of government health expenditure as well as the out-of-pocket expenditure. So government health expenditure actually refers to the expenditure incurred by the government, that is cumulative central as well as the state government combined, on providing the healthcare services, the goods as well as programs to the population. Next one is that if you actually analyze the trends, the GHE, that is the government health expenditure as a percentage of GDP, has actually increased significantly by 63% between 2014-15 and 2021-22 from 1.13% in the year 2014-15 to 1.84% in 2021-2022. And also, if you see, this health expenditure per capita has increased from rupees 1,108 in the year 2014-15 to rupees 3,156 in the year 2021-22, and almost this is seen as 3 times from the 2014-15 levels. Now let us understand what is this out-of-pocket expenditure. This actually refers to the direct payments made by the households for the healthcare goods as well as services from their own resources without any third-party coverage. That is, any other institution like the government or other institutions involved here. Next one is, it is actually the OOPE, that is the out-of-pocket expenditure, as a share of the total health expenditure has actually declined from around 62.6% in 2014-15 to 47.1% in 2019 and 20. Moving on, if you see at this downward trend, it actually continued with this particular share further dropping to 44.4% in 2020-21 and 39.4% in 2021-2022. Now, let us understand what were the several factors, reducing out-of-pocket expenditure in India. First one, schemes like Ayushman Bharat, under that you have a sub-component of Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, which actually provides financial protection for hospitalization, reducing the out-of-pocket expenditure. Next one is strengthening the government health facilities by, increased utilization of subsidized inpatient care as well as deliveries. Next one is free ambulance services. This actually averts the spending on transportation during the medical emergencies. Next is free drugs as well as diagnostics. Here it is essential medicines and diagnostic services provided at the Ayushman Bharat Health and Wellness Center. Next one is Jan Aushadhi Kendras. This is low-cost, quality generic medicines and surgical items available across different districts, as well as next one is price regulation, that is affordable pricing for essential medicines as well as medical devices. And finally, another factor that was essential, in declining the out-of-pocket expenditure is health grants to local bodies, that is around rupees 70,000 crore in grants used to strengthen the primary healthcare system. The next article that we'll be discussing about is MPOX. So this particular article discusses about the largest ever outbreak of monkeypox in Democratic Republic of Congo. So this actually has relevance from the general science point of view, specifically for your prelims examination. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what is this monkeypox, whether it is a zoonotic disease, or what are the zoonotic diseases and how it is actually caused, etc. And here it is actually a part of the viral disease. So this is actually important from general science point of view for your prelims examination. And with respect to that of your PYQ, there has been a question that has been asked in the year 2013 in your preliminary examination with respect to which of the following diseases can be transmitted from one person to another through the process of tattooing. So moving forward, let us actually understand what this particular article is talking about. So here, the Democratic Republic of Congo is actually grappling with its biggest MPOX outbreak, that is the monkeypox disease outbreak, with over 4,500 suspected cases and nearly 300 deaths since January 2024. So moving forward, let us actually understand what this particular disease of MPOX or the monkeypox is. It is a zoonotic viral disease. That is, MPOX is a zoonotic viral disease. Zoonotic actually means it is actually spread between animals and people or persons and human beings. Okay. So a zoonotic disease is a disease that is actually spread from the animals to human beings, and it's caused by the monkeypox virus, and the first ever human case was actually recorded in the year 1970 in the Democratic Republic of Congo or the DRC. And there are two clades, or it is also called as two groups or two types. So there are two known types of the clades of monkeypox virus. One is clade 1 that is originating in Central Africa, and clade 2 that is actually originating in West Africa. Moving forward, let us actually understand what are the symptoms of this particular MPOX virus. There is actually a rash or a mucosal lesion. So let's understand what is it. The most recognizable symptom is a skin rash or the lesions on the mucous membrane, typically that actually lasts for a period of over 2 to 4 weeks. And these lesions progress through different stages, starting as flat spots, and then eventually they actually become bumps which are actually filled with fluid, and eventually that actually crusts over before falling off. And moving on, there is actually also fever. Apart from the rashes as well as the lesions, there is actually fever, a common symptom often that is appearing before the formation of these rashes and lesions. The other flu-like symptoms actually include headache, muscle ache, back pain, low energy, swollen lymph nodes, etc., which are frequently reported. Moving forward, let us actually understand the nature of the transmission of this particular disease or the MPOX. So it is human to human. That is, MPOX primarily spreads through close direct contact with the body fluids or the lesions of an infected person with an uninfected person, and this can actually include either skin to skin contact, including the sexual contact, and contact with the respiratory secretions through prolonged face-to-face contact, and indirect contact with contaminated objects like clothing, bedding or towels. And it can also spread through actually sexual means, like sexual transmission of MPOX has been confirmed with a significant portion of cases that have been reported in the Democratic Republic of Congo outbreak is actually found in sex workers. And moving on, the new variant in the DRC actually seems to cause milder lesions primarily on the genital area, potentially leading to misdiagnosis as well as silent transmission. Moving forward, now it is important to understand what are these zoonotic diseases. So zoonotic diseases are the infections that can be transmitted from animals to humans, and these diseases can be caused by various germs that include either bacteria, virus, parasites or fungi. So in case of viruses, it actually includes diseases like rabies, Ebola, MPOX. In case of bacteria, it actually includes brucellosis, anthrax as well as salmonellosis, which is actually caused by salmonella. Other parasites actually include giardia as well as tapeworms, and in case of fungi, it includes ringworm as well as histoplasmosis. And moving forward, transmission between animals to the humans. That is, zoonotic diseases are infections that spread between animals and people. And if you see the severity of it, some zoonotic diseases like rabies, etc. can be very severe and it can be life-threatening. In some cases can also lead to death, while others are actually milder and can resolve on their own. If you see examples of zoonotic diseases, they include MPOX, rabies, West Nile virus, Salmonella, Ebola virus, that is EVD, etc. The first question reads, with reference to the National Health Accounts Estimates for India 2019-20, consider the following statements. The share of the out-of-pocket expenditure in total health expenditure increased from 2014 to 2019. This is actually wrong. And government health expenditure as a percentage of country's GDP has decreased from 2014 to 2019. This is also wrong. So which of the following of the above statements are correct? Since both are actually wrong, the answer will be option D. So moving forward, the second question is with respect to that of Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. Consider the following statements. It is a centrally sponsored scheme. Yes, it is correct. It provides a direct benefit cover of over rupees 5 lakh per family per year. This is also correct. The inclusion of the households over here is based on the SECC 2011 data. This is also correct. Since all the statements are actually correct, the answer will be option D. So moving forward, the third question is how many of the following are the implication of US Fed rate hike on the Indian economy? As we actually saw, what are the impacts of the US interest rate decisions on the Indian economy? First one is capital outflows. This is correct. Currency appreciation. This is wrong. Costlier imports. This is correct. Decrease in government bond yields. This is actually wrong. Since 1 and 3 are actually correct, only 2 of them are correct. So the answer will be option B. So moving forward, the fourth question reads, consider the following diseases: MPOX, rabies, West Nile virus, dengue as well as chikungunya. How many of the above diseases are zoonotic diseases? If you have actually observed our discussion very keenly, you will actually find the answer is only 3 of them are correct. So you have to name what are those 3. The fifth question actually reads, consider the following statements regarding the transmission of monkeypox. It is primarily transmitted through direct contact with body fluids or lesions of an infected person. This is correct. Sexual contact is not considered a significant mode of MPOX transmission. This is actually wrong. And MPOX spreads through the air like common cold. This is also wrong. So since only statement 1 is correct and one of the statements is correct, the correct answer will be option A. So moving on, let us now solve the mains practice question. The question reads, critically examine the need for a menstrual leave policy in India. It is a 10 marker and the answer should be written in 150 words. And the approach to this particular question can be broken down into introduction, body as well as the conclusion. So in the introduction, we will introduce menstrual leave as a proposed policy which is aimed at supporting women during the menstrual period by providing them designated leave days reflecting an emerging recognition on women's health, and this actually what is the need for it in workplace and in educational institutions, be it colleges or schools. And in the body, we'll be discussing about what are the advantages, like it will actually focus on the health and well-being, enhanced productivity, educational continuity, gender sensitivity, breaking the stereotypes of the taboos, etc. Whereas on the other hand, we'll also be discussing about the challenges and the criticisms, for example, potential for stigma and discrimination, implementation challenges, economical as well as the operational impact. And towards the conclusion, we will conclude by affirming that while menstrual leave has the potential to actually work or to advance towards the gender equality as well as support women's health, its implementation must be carefully designed in order to avoid any kind of unintended negative consequences on women. With this, we've come to the end of our daily news analysis discussion. So for regular updates, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.